currently at the moment what I'm painting is I'm recreating scenes from the 1980s, five-a-side football matches, you know, and I'm getting people to send me in their images of tournaments that they were playing in 1980, in the early 80s, you know. Which is good because the people that send me in the images, I know some of the people in the matches, in the playing in the tournaments. That makes it very interesting, you know. I was only actually talking to one of the guys that's in this painting that I'm doing now. I was only talking to him yesterday, and I was telling him about the painting I was doing. You know, that's in the 80s. It's down in Angel Street, and it was Fatima Warriors playing. I'm sure he said it was the Ivy that they were playing at the time, which I find it very interesting, you know, because recreating history, you know, of a five-a-side that was a very important pastime for, you know, for people, you know, and it was a very great way of socialising, getting together, and you know, when I was back in the 80s, there was five-a-sides all over the place, you know, football all over, and it's making a resurgence now as well. You have people like Fatima making a comeback, you know, and winning a few leagues, and it's great, you know. In my journey, my art journey, you know, before I came to Pallas, I was in a place called Common Ground. It was an award I got, and I was through Common Ground and getting visits of Mark from Pallas. That when my time was up in Common Ground, I put in submissions to come in down into Pallas, and I haven't looked back. You know, like if it wasn't for Pallas and the studio that I have here, I wouldn't be able to create these moments of history. You know, like, because a lot of my work is about disappearing buildings, disappearing pastimes. It's a bit nostalgic, but it's important, I feel. You know, so yeah, I'd be lost without Pallas. Where would you get it? A studio in Thomas Street, you know, like all I have to do is get the bus, don't need to drive. The bus leads me straight outside, and I'm in heaven at the moment.
I think studios at the moment, they're important. As an artist, I found that our studio spaces tend historically to be in places that are in a state of flux. They're in between uses, or maybe their original use is no longer valid or used. For instance, like maybe there were an old convent or an old school or old office blocks, and they become outdated. So then artists then start using those spaces. They reclaim them, these disused spaces, for our own creativity, and they're generally the spaces that are only available to us. And I've noticed that the repetitiveness of the artist studio position is that the studios exist for a few years and then they're gone. So there's no stability for artists in where their place of work might be. So we're continually having to research and refine and work kind of in quite insecure manners. So with Pallas Studios, who've been in Dublin for like 30 years at this stage, it has been a huge resource for the artists of Dublin, because it offers stability to us and something that we can rely on, and a place that we can call home, and that we know we've got more time in, hopefully, more time in, that we can create longer projects, and also with that sense of security and a sense of belonging, it's much better for our creativity as well, and for a sense of belonging to the community. I've re-engaged in recent years with my art practice. I went back to study my MFA in photography in 2017, graduating in 2019. But prior to that, I had a career in film and TV and video and photography. But prior to that as well, I graduated with a degree in fine art, and when I was released into the world as a young artist, I had no clue what to do or where I was going, and I was very lucky that I found a space in Pallas Studios, in one of their early studios, which is up on Sheriff Street, was up on Sheriff Street, which is now a series of high-rise buildings and office blocks. At the time, it was an industrial area with industrial units, and it was kind of, I think, an old kind of railway depot or something as well around there. And we had a small studio in, I think it was Castle Forbes Industrial Estate on Sheriff Street, which is now a bustling commercial office block area. At the time, it was an industrial area with loads of manufacturing businesses, and we were in, I think it was Castle Forbes Industrial Estate, which was a pretty low-rise industrial area that had a lot of railway tracks around it. And that's where I had my first studio with Pallas Studio back nearly almost 20 years ago, in my previous incarnation, when I attempted to be an artist before. But luckily, in that time that's passed, and I've re-engaged in my art practice, it was fantastic to know that Pallas Studios were still going, and that they are so stable, and they're such a centre pin to the arts and art studios in Dublin. One of my, not my earliest, well, I've actually got some very early memories. They're a bit vague, of Pallas Studio events a very long time ago, which were quite wild and quite fun, and they were quite edgy, and my memory is not so great of them. So they always had a good time. In recent years, when I re-engaged in my practice, my first re-engagement with Pallas Studios was, I think it was one of the earlier periodic reviews that were held, and I went to the exhibition with some of my fellow classmates from the MFA in Ulster University, and I was immediately taken by the beautiful range of people that were there at the show, and the other artists that were there, and it really felt like a great, like a real community of different types of people and different age groups. And as a parent with a young child, I was really happy to see that people had brought their children into the exhibition space, and that it was a much bigger kind of idea of an artistic community than it would have been maybe 20 years ago.
It started with Pallas Studios and our projects in studios in 2019. When I say start, I got a place in the studio in Francis Street. I loved the place. It looked like it was crumbling down, but it's still standing. Great light. And then after about 2 years, I transferred to here in Thomas Street. I paint. My primary concern is painting, obsession. Madness is painting, and I'm one of the luckiest persons alive to go into my space here and paint. Concerns are really just, I suppose, subject matter are drawn from the imagination, from the past, and it offers endless fascination to me as well as a medium. And you know, Pallas has provided, not just for me, but for a lot of artists, like to me, possibly the best service on the, well, certainly in the capital. I can't talk about anywhere else. And they're a platform for projects, and I can't thank them higher for the team involved. They'll probably hate me saying team, but I'll say it, for getting my work to, or including me in the Biennale in Zagreb a few years back. And they're real players. Pallas, for me, are probably the best provider of studios for artists. I've seen other initiatives, and they're okay. They're kind of profit driven, and that's important, I suppose. But Pallas are the stalwarts, and I'm very pleased and very proud to be part of it. And as long as I behave myself. So yeah, I mean, this is the beating capital, or beating heart of the capital culturally around here. There's another thing I just said, another cliche. So for me, I'm right on the street here on Thomas Street, and I get to see, all walks of life, and it's a great backdrop for me, both hourly. The light is great here, north light on the other side, but I prefer to be I prefer to have this light. It's important to me. Even though a lot of my work is not necessarily drawn from life, it's just good to know that there's a beating heart out there. I also have a piece of paper on the wall that I put up recently, which is remember to laugh, it's not that serious. And I really have to remind myself of that, because we live in very, very challenging times, and we're very lucky to be on an island where at the moment it's still peaceful. And and I want to, even if I'm using this as a platform, and I am, to say that everybody is welcome here, everybody. And that's one thing that Pallas have made me, and I'm sure the other artists, very welcome. And when I first went into the gates of the campus, I suppose, in Francis Street, in the Dean Street area of Pallas, I saw this huge construction, and it was really indicative of their philosophy of sharing and caring for people. And we all need to care for each other. And that's really, it is about soft power. I'm angry every morning when I look at the newspapers, I look at people not taking responsibility for it. And one of the things I do feel as an artist, and maybe I'm talking too much, Sergey, is that I have to remind myself that I cannot get overly concerned about my work not reflecting what's happening, but I think it happens anyway. There's this sort of a dark river somewhere that flows in all our work, and we are referencing, we're human beings, and we don't really, I don't think we, like other human beings where on the planet, being hurt or destroyed or wiped off because of some crazy ideology. And I like to believe there is no left or right. There's just doing the right thing in the right moment. And that's the problem. We've been divided. But, so Pallas as a project is great, and long may it last. But yeah, I do. I'm conscious. It makes me conscious of this isn't a vanity project. At times it was, when I was younger, but so I like to hear the exhausts of cars, and I hear the emergency services and bless them if they need them. I also hear screaming and shouting and people looking for food on the street and people who are inebriated. But it makes me feel privileged to be here, to be in a studio. People need to live. The homeless crisis is off the scale, but here I am in a studio. So I feel very privileged. I'm checking my privileges. And that, to me, that's what having a studio with Pallas is about. Before that, I was in a shed. So I can't complain here. So it's well lit. It's warm. It's very warm. And as you can hear in the background, all life is here.